fuck up. It's time to talk business. Jared Taylor, Matt Best, and Evan Hafer proudly present Blackhearted. Sponsored by BlackRifle Coffee Company and Arson Wave.
Hey!
Well. Who do we have in the
another
booth
guest?
today?
You know what's great about this show is a lot of really cool people have been asking to come on it that have a lot to offer.
They get a lot to offer, you know, and I will do a slight intro, and then I like to let other people introduce themselves. I'll do a slight intro. So we've got Aaron from SOFLETE. I'm going to just say Aaron from SOFLETE. I'll let you go ahead and fill in the rest of the blanks. I'm not sure if you want your last name out there or not. He came out. Excuse me, he's out here for the next couple days. We're going to be working together on a couple different ventures. He has a lot of experience doing several different things. So he's only been with SOFLETE for how long? A year?
No, I came on just after SOFLETE was formed.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
Since we started January 1st, 2015, or SOFLETE did, and I came on, January 10th, January 15th.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let you do a quick little bio for us, then we're going to launch into our Q&A.
Sure. So currently I am COO of SOFLETE. Mm-hmm. My background is all on Wall Street mainly. I started off in the trading pits of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Then worked as a prop trader for an investment bank, Bear Stearns.
What's a prop trader?
Prop trader is like a proprietary trader. Mm-hmm. So in-house, basically inventory manager.
Got it.
Of financial instruments. And essentially my job was to create markets. So if you wanted to buy or sell a financial instrument, I was, willing to take on the other side of that trade and make a price for each one. And part of that is to, one, just make money.
Right.
The other bigger part of it is to facilitate transactions for the bank's clients. Did that for a while and then moved down to North Carolina where I worked in commodities derivatives, specifically electricity and natural gas.
Interesting.
Up until October of last year.
Wow. So why did you leave?
The super short answer is that I didn't want to do it anymore, and I didn't have to do it anymore.
I didn't have to do it anymore. Right. And what? Explain to me what I didn't have to do that anymore. Explain to me what that means.
That means that I had a number in my mind of what I could have in the bank, where I would just be able to do what I wanted.
Got it.
And that doesn't mean that I'm taking private yachts to Cannes Film Festival, that type of thing. But,
you don't really need to do that. I don't want to go to Cannes.
Right. No, not that I want to either.
That sounds boring as hell.
But, I feel really fortunate. I had a really fortunate run. I was with a really good team of guys for most of my career. And, it's allowed me to step aside and focus on SOFLETE and really focus on growing the business without having financial pressures personally to do so.
Well, I think, one of those things, and I'll add to Aaron just a little bit, which is Aaron can be dry in the sense of when we're going to talk about whether or not he was a commodities trader. But we just had this really cool conversation, what you're doing now outside and explain SOFLETE. Just give me about the 30-second elevator pitch on SOFLETE so everybody out there knows exactly what it is. Then we'll transition to some of the other things that we want to talk about today, which is it's getting funding for your business. So our last episode was choosing the right partners.
Yeah, now we're finding money.
Let's talk about money.
And
let's have that money conversation.
I think we got the perfect person for this right now.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. What's your last name, Aaron?
It's Woolman.
Yeah, Woolman. And then what's your undergrad and grad? Do you have a graduate degree too?
I don't have a graduate degree. I went to the University of Wisconsin and barely graduated. However,
you what? What'd you graduate with?
I got my BA in economics.
I knew he was going to say economics. I knew it.
Well, you know what it is I didn't have the grades to get into the business school, and economics was kind of like the fallback social science.
Yeah, and where are all your business school friends now?
Well, yeah, I would say so. I mean, that's honestly though a really good point. Though I think in business in general, there's I think a bell-shaped curve to intelligence and profitability. You know, the smartest guys I know are guys that maybe love their careers as rocket scientists at NASA. You know, but they're not making millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, every time someone asks me what my biggest advice is onto what to study if they want to become a successful business owner, I say tax law.
Right?
Yeah, but shouldn't I go to school for business? No. Go to school for tax law. Like,
then you can start your own business.
Yeah, then
around
you can
tax law, and you'll actually know tax law.
Right?
That's,
The details matter.
the details do matter.
yeah. Well, why is a professor teaching business courses in a university if he was so good at it?
Yeah.
There's a few out there.
Depending on the business school. You know, some business schools like Columbia, New York City, most of the professors are actually legit retired businessmen. There are a lot of other business schools, though, that, you know, I have my PhD in business.
Right.
All right. But you've actually
have you
never
owned one?
No, you've never actually done anything.
Wharton is another one. I think you actually have to have been a success outside of the university setting in order to teach.
Oh
it.
wow, that's a sweet requirement.
Well, and
right
they
there.
don't. Well, they don't. They have a really no bullshit program. So you know, there's a lot of schools out there. I don't want to digress. I want to get into. Tell me a little bit about SOFLETE. Tell me about what you're doing with SOFLETE, and then outside of SOFLETE, what you have going on, and then we'll get into our finding money conversation.
Sounds good. Yeah. So SOFLETE, the super short version is we design, develop, and distribute physical programming, nutritional supplements, and apparel that are used by special operations forces around the globe.
And how'd you get into that, man? Like tell me why and how you got into that.
So one of the other partners, who I'll just mention by his first name, Brent, he and I met 4 or 5 years ago. In fact, a good friend of mine from high school, his name is Dan, who's in 18 Alpha. He and I kind of diverged when we went to college. He went to West Point, and I went to Madison. Our lives were about as 180 degrees as possible.
Madison.
Yeah, Madison was a good time. And, you know, Dan and I reconnected a few years after he graduated. We kind of stopped talking to each other, partly because of his unavailability, you know, being at like SFAS and Ranger School. His phone was just off. This was before Facebook and everything.
Right.
And, you know, we reconnected shortly after he came back from a combat tour in Iraq as a captain. And that really rekindled our friendship.
Right.
That was really also my kind of first real learning experience about the military. And as I reconnected with him, we became better friends. That led me to want to learn more about what he was experiencing. I did an endurance event that Brent was leading. He and I became really good friends afterwards.
Which one was that?
It was a GoRuck challenge.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And yeah, Brent and I started hanging out afterwards. We became good friends. And then literally a couple years later, we were sitting in my kitchen. My buddy Dan was in town, and Dan was talking about how his weight had fluctuated. You know, he's not that big of a guy, maybe 30, 40 pounds, and how he was his heaviest when he was on his ODA. And his reasoning behind that was it was really important to me to be able to be in full kit, pick up the heaviest guy on my team, also in full kit, and sprint to cover with that guy. And if you look at the SOFLETE, you know, kind of mantra, that really comes down to the basis of our ideology around physical programming.
Right. Well, and the funny thing is that was kind of the basis of what we trained for all the time. Like, And we used to do a lot of deadlifts. We used to do like, and when I say when I was deploying for my previous occupation, and I'm typically sit around 155 pounds naturally. Like that's just kind of my natural frame. That's what I sit at, which is I'm a pretty light guy, but I focused a lot on deadlift. I focused a lot on like high endurance, short paced, basically explosive strength with 4 minutes of VO2 max, right? And because I did that, a lot of it was just based on experience, which was like I need to be able to function at a super high level physically for a really short amount of time. Like most of the gunfights that I'd ever been in, like they didn't last more than about 2 minutes. And when I say that, I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm saying that it just didn't last. You're in a moving vehicle typically, or you're on patrol and then you're engaged and you either break contact or you move through contact. That's kind of your two options there. I was lucky enough to never get like pinned down for an extended period of time. So for me, I took that and I started training. We started training for that like really early on in the war, which was I was carrying way too much weight early in Iraq. So we were carrying like 12 magazines at that time and like water and a bunch of other shit. It was like you're getting ready to go on some kind of like combat expedition. And I was winded like getting to the top of the stairs because carrying 100 pounds worth of shit.
Sure.
And that in combination with the adrenaline of being shot at and the heat of 130 degrees, that's like it's a brutal time. So it didn't take me long. Like a couple magazines came off, then a couple more magazines came off, and then I wasn't carrying 4 frags. I was carrying 2 frags. And then I think the last thing I was doing over there, I had a magazine in my back pocket and 2 frags. I think that's about what I got down to. So, one is being comfortable in your environment, knowing that, okay, I'm not going to go through 12 magazines on this rooftop. And if I am, then, I'm probably in a fucking shit sandwich anyway. So I love the fact, like, SOFLETE, their specific goal is to train guys for that, because we were always taking CrossFit workouts, right? And then we were modifying them just a little bit. And we had a unique opportunity to have, I think, a guy that Brent met early on, which was the guy that owns Power Athlete. So John
Wellborn.
Yeah, John. Yeah, he came out and was on Drinking Bros with us. That guy is like a fantastic intellect. Like he's an incredible mind when it comes to training. So I think taking kind of what they're doing over there at Power Athlete and then modifying it specifically for the tactical athlete, fucking badass idea, man. Like SOFLETE's a really, really fucking cool thing.
Yeah, John's a good friend of ours. He and Brent are tight, and we have nothing but a lot of respect for that guy.
Super smart. I loved listening to him.
Oh yeah, super smart, like tons of experience as far as training guys, like mobility and mobility, flexibility, strength, endurance. Like, dude, the guy is a fucking phenomenal. I mean, obviously, he was an NFL, 10 years in the NFL, right?
Yeah, he's also one of the biggest dudes I've ever met.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like gigantic.
Yeah, he's a mountain of a human being. So, that's a cool thing about having Drinking Bros, now BlackRifle Coffee, this gigantic building, is we get guys coming through here all the time, like you and John, so we can sit down and talk to them. The next thing I want to talk to you about is, all right, what are you doing outside of SOFLETE?
Yeah. So my background, like I said, was all on Wall Street. I'm not really involved in that world anymore.
Right.
I am involved in a angel group in the North Carolina area, which for anyone who's listening that doesn't know, angel investing is kind of if you're trying to start a business and you don't really have it off the ground yet, you're not really ready to go to maybe a traditional venture capital firm.
Right.
You look for what are called angel investors, and essentially, usually it's private individuals or groups of people that are willing to make usually anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000 investment in like a true kind of startup, seed money funding.
Right.
So I have that, and then we also own a whole animal butcher shop,
God, I love that.
which is not an investment that is capital return driven. Let's put it that way. It's an investment of ideology, but
Such
something
a cool
that's
skill,
really important.
though. Like,
Are you butchering the animals?
No, so I don't know anything about me.
damn.
And part of that is my growing involvement with SOFLETE. When I left Wall Street life, I was like, all right, I'm going to spend every day at the butcher shop. I'm going to go in there. I'm really going to help those guys out. And it became pretty apparent that I was just basically in the fucking way all the time. It was
Right.
like, you don't know how to cut meat. You're not doing anything with like marketing. You're basically just like sitting there making everyone feel uncomfortable. So like, get the fuck out of here.
Right.
And at the same time, SOFLETE was growing very quickly, so it required, time and attention.
So angel investing, and Jared brought up a question a little earlier ago, which was, what's the difference between venture capital and an angel investor?
Sure. So I think that sometimes that line actually gets pretty blurred.
Right.
However, venture capital is usually more institutional. So you have a company that is a venture capital firm that everything they do involves funding companies that are essentially off the runway. They're in the air, but maybe not at kind of like flying altitude.
Got it.
And what they do is help accelerate those companies, not only with capital, but also with expertise, connections, relationships, as well as usually, board management.
And they take
So like Shark Tank.
ownership, though.
They do take ownership, and that's something that anyone that's looking to raise money, definitely, or invest money, really needs to understand as far
The
as
difference
how
between the two.
well, and how multiple rounds of fundraising can really, dilute people, and how you could really get screwed over. I mean, you could invest in the first round of fundraising of a company that ends up blowing up, but if this, weird things happen in the subsequent rounds, you may lose money, and the company could go from, being worth nothing to, $100 million.
Right.
So I think that it's definitely, for the investor, it's not an amateur game.
Right.
I think you really need to know what you're doing. I think with the tech boom in San Francisco, angel investing is kind of a catchphrase term, has become really popular.
Right.
And there's probably, just like everything else, a lot of people out there that, don't really know what they're doing.
Right.
So.
Well, and it's been my experience. Like I've sat in on both. So I know VCs, I know angels, and a lot of guys they've got their foot in both world, right? So, some guys were quite possibly they were successful, and they were successful because they became venture capitalists, and then they became angel, and then they sit on the board of like a angel investor. I guess I don't know what you'd call that, fund, I guess.
Yeah, usually it's a fund or a group, and there are guys that are referred to as super angels, right?
What's that mean?
So
They
super
have,
angel,
like, big wings, and they just fucking fly around.
Huge wings.
Yeah.
yeah, they wear costumes and capes. No, super angels usually are guys that have a lot more capital than the average angel, and the background to really accelerate through different
So
relationships.
they're going to choose based on kind of pet projects. So I got two questions for you. One, how should people out there assess themselves on whether or not they should seek out an angel investor? Is the first question.
Yeah, so I think that just like probably everything else that you do, you need to be prepared. And if you're going to approach someone and ask them for money, you better have your shit straight. You better be able to answer tons of questions.
Real work being done.
Yeah, you're presenting an idea and asking someone to put their, most likely hard-earned money behind it. And, you can't just show up and, like you were saying, hey, I've got this awesome idea and nothing behind it, give me money.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I always tell guys like because there's how many guys I come into contact with in the small business world, the startup world, like I don't know, it seems like 10 a day at times. But, invest in the accounting, meaning like invest the time and energy that it takes in order to get your books absolutely
The
dialed.
accounting and the true market research. Those are your tools right there.
And I think because numbers, a business should function on metrics, and I'm a firm believer on this. So accountability, whether that's customer service, whether that's like dimensions of a box, whether that's accounting, or just figuring out how many emails somebody has responded to, right? A company needs to be assessed based on numbers, and those numbers, you have to define the value, right? So your P&L will just tell you one story, but it doesn't tell you the whole story, right?
Yeah, that's definitely true. However, I also think that at the early stage, the numbers really are the least important thing. And one thing that
tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I've heard you guys mention this on the podcast before. When people invest, especially smart angel or venture capital investors,
right?
Let's say I put together a business plan and everything's done very thorough. I've dotted all my I's, crossed all my T's, and I go looking for investors. That business plan, if I launch that business, is not going to be what that business looks like 2 years from now.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
If I'm looking at this in the investor, all right, it's important to have the plan to show someone's thinking about what they're doing and they have an idea of where to take things and they can strategize properly. But really, what you're looking for is investing in the team that can execute. And when they have to pivot, they're able to make that pivot and keep the business going.
Right.
And I'm sure you guys have seen that at Article 15 and also here at BlackRifle Coffee. I mean, have things gone exactly the way you thought they were going to?
Not at all.
No.
But here's the biggest mistake I've seen every time somebody has approached me saying they have an epic plan or they're looking for investors or things like that. I ask them questions about the market. So I'll just give you an example. And this isn't a specific, I'm just using this as an example. A guy wants to start a holster company. He says, "No, I got these great holsters. I think it would be big, yada yada yada." Okay, what are your top 2 or top 3 holster companies out there right now, and what are they doing in the marketing space? What are they doing in the social media space, and yada yada? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, there's strike one. Like you don't know what the big dogs are doing because you're not studying that. What kind of traffic are they doing? What who are the suppliers for the raw materials that you're going to need? And do you have an open line of communication with them? These are all questions a smart investor is going to ask right away. So I mean, if you fail on that preparation side, no one's ever going to trust you with their money.
No,
because
I agree.
you didn't bother to even look into the market space to say, why is this gonna succeed? Because I'd say 90% of businesses that start up are something that's the same entering a space.
Sure.
Very few apps have kind of become a new thing. These tech things is where you're Uber, you're inventing something that didn't exist. There's no competitors, there's no space for this. There's those kinds, but then if you're just another brand, another lifestyle, another person that bags coffee, another person that makes holsters, like you better have a really, really well thorough put together pitch that's saying, why are people going to choose me over Raven Concealment?
Yeah, I think, it comes down to...
That is not a pitch for Raven Concealment, by the way.
Not at all. I just use them.
You have to have an edge, right? And that was one of the things we learned, right away back on the trading floor was, what is your edge? Anyone could open a stock trading account and sit in front of the computer. You think if you just did that now, you would, start pushing keys and make money? No, I mean, and it's the same thing.
We should try it.
Right? Yeah. Let's take half of our money.
Right?
Best 11x day trading.
Right? Cue the montage.
It's just us at computers, and then it shows us all broke.
We need to film that commercial.
Big whiteboard of like
We're
math
not
formulas.
good at everything, but we're good at coffee.
Right? But no, the edge, what is your competitive edge? Right? Maybe it's that you're awesome at marketing or your product's better or you can deliver faster or something. But I agree to just say, hey, I just want to do this for no discernible reason, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, obviously is a recipe for failure.
Well, I hear this from a lot of guys. Jared and I both, because of the perceived success of our business, and I think sometimes we make it look easy. Like, oh, all these guys do is just fucking make funny videos. And it's like, nah, okay, try to make a video that's seen 1 million times. Try.
Start the stopwatch right now.
Just go try. Tell me how much money and time that you spend on trying to figure out how to make a video that's seen 1 million times. Okay.
Yeah.
Then plug a business behind that and then run it. So it's not only just like programming the content, it's also running a traditional, there's a lot of traditional business skills that go along with this.
Transpose
so it's
your next video.
and leadership, and then recruiting, just hiring the right people. Every day that I step into my office, like every fucking day, I step into my office and I say, how am I creating value? And not only just value for today, but value for the next year, value for the next 2 years. How am I making or going to make BlackRifle a successful, relevant, profitable company 2 years from now? Today is just part of that, right? And a lot of guys, when they think about business, they think, well, I'm going to go into business for myself so I don't have to do anything. Okay, so if that's what you think this involves, if you just think like having a great idea,
I'm going to business for myself so I could go on vacations and post fun pictures.
Yeah, just like post pictures of me in like Spain and Hawaii and shit, right? Well, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And also, I've taken investment capital. So I took investment capital with Twist Rate. I sold 33% of the company to a VC up in Park City when I first got out here. And one of the worst experiences of my life. One of the single worst experiences of my life. Now, I learned a fuck ton about business, but what I also learned, like along the way, I mean, this is like what I always tell everybody is like I spent $500,000 getting my MBA. It was more expensive than anything that I could have paid for. As far as like, I think that's even more expensive than a Harvard MBA. So, but I learned everything that I needed to know what not to do with $500,000 in about 18 months. So, but I had to pay attention, right? So it wasn't only the fact that I was spending money. I was spending my money too, by the way. It wasn't like somebody just writes you a check and then all of a sudden you could. Like I could have gone down to Vegas and just fucking, spent all the money on black. And honestly, I probably would have been better if I would have hit. It would have doubled. But, no, I was the custodian of the investment capital. But the biggest problem that I ran into is that the investors and I were completely on a different sheet of music, right? They didn't really give two flying fucks. $500,000 to those guys was really not a big investment. And they're solely concentrated on a much larger technology piece, so they had nothing to do with my business. When it wasn't just their investment, it was also the investment of their resources that they were supposed to provide, and that the resources were actually way more important than
the money.
They were way more important. I needed their resources. I could give a flying fuck less about their money. The money came with it, obviously, because it was one of those things that it was part of the criteria. And what we learned early on in that process was we could, and we ultimately had to take that capital and go out and pay for the things that the resources that were basically part of the operating agreement. What each person was not only capital as intellectual investment. What they would bring to the table, what I realized early on was that the money was just one portion of the equation, man, just like a tiny fraction of the equation. Because we started BlackRifle with nothing, basically, like absolutely nothing.
$1,800.
$1,800.
Same thing with SOFLETE.
So everything that we learned was that it wasn't about the money, it's about the people in the business.
Yeah, no doubt. No, and you have to be careful who you get involved with, even if they're professionals.
Right.
I mean, those guys, venture capitalists are sharks, right?
They are.
And I'm not trying to be cliche off the Shark Tank TV show. You have guys that are writing contracts that are going to be favorable to themselves. In fact, I have a friend in Chicago right now who owns a sporting goods business. Mm-hmm. And they're about to sell the business, and he's like, I don't know how I feel about the sale, but, we took a VC investment 2 years ago to accelerate our growth, and I'm going to get those guys finally out of my fucking life.
Right.
And same thing. I mean, it's just been this total double-edged sword for him. Yeah, did it help grow the business? Sure. Now does he have this business partner, essentially, who he doesn't like, whose maybe goals aren't the same for the business as his are? This venture capital firm clearly just wanted to be like, grow and sell immediately.
Right.
And that wasn't what he wanted.
I mean, because at that point, once you get to that point of being a venture capitalist, you've been successful one way or another around the business field. You know what your time's worth, and you're not going to waste time digging in the weeds and these things that you threw a couple $100,000 at. You're just trying to get that return and keep moving.
Yeah, I think, there are some firms that are better than others out there. Certainly good firms should be willing and are willing to give resources and help to the companies that they're invested in. But not every firm is like that.
No, and honestly, like the guys that we were involved with, they were and should not have been a VC firm. Actually, they should not have had a fund. They were technologists and they were inventors that really didn't have the entire picture of business. They didn't. Like, they had no concept of marketing, and basically they were guys that had survived on other people's money. And so, when you're like fat and happy off other people's money, when you're sitting on an account with between $12 and $20 million that's automatically replenished, you become like a trust fund baby, basically. Whereas like $500,000 investment, when you have 4 other investments that are plus million, and you're just on a permanent vacation as it is, a $500,000 investment, it doesn't really mean much. And because once again, when it's somebody else's money, you can just flush that shit down the toilet and it doesn't really matter. So I've met a wide variety of people in VC angel world. One of my really close friends, he's got a angel fund down in Austin, Texas, and he invests a lot in technology. He sits on the board of probably 30 different companies now. Former SF guy, fucking fantastic dude. But he takes an active interest in just educating himself on each and every one of the investments, the process from, let's say from the invention to the sale. And he plugs himself in when he feels like it's necessary, as far as like, this is the experience that I bring to the table, because he's bought and sold, I think, around 20 companies at this point. His last sale was $300+ million for what was it, a tequila? Do you remember that?
I think so.
No, vodka. It's some spirits company that he bought for like $3 million and sold for $300. And
wait a minute, wasn't that Tito's?
No, that was Deep Eddy, I think.
Oh, yeah, Deep Eddy.
And the one thing that I realized with him is he'll take a look at these things and he'll go way down into the weeds and he'll start to understand the business. He actually starts to incorporate it early on in the due diligence. He starts to kind of feel where the company is. And it's so interesting because you'll talk to the guy and he'll know so much about one specific thing where you're like, how the fuck do you know this much about the gaming market in Japan? He's
doing his job.
He's doing his job. And I would eventually love to get to that point, because one of the fun things about business is the constant evolution and problem solving and learning that comes with it, which is like, I didn't have a fucking clue 2 years ago when it comes to like fulfillment, operations, packaging, postage, regardless of the specific niche of information, I didn't have a clue close to what I do today, right? And so it's just the evolution of learning all the time is so fucking cool to me, that seeing different pitches as a VC or an angel of different businesses, what people are doing, and just learning about the personality of the business, the market space, whatever it might be. I find it fascinating. So hopefully I'll be there someday.
So, Aaron, do the angel company that you work with, do they have a website or anything that people can visit? Like,
yes, it's Triangle Angel Partners.
TriangleAngelPartners.com?
Man, I'm not sure if it's...
Google it.
Yeah, just Google it.
Google it. So if there's anybody out there that thinks they're ready to step up to the plate.
We're not really I would say like a company. You know, we don't have an office. It's really more of a collective of investors.
Smart guys.
Well, most of them are pretty smart. I feel like I'm the dumbest guy in the room, which is why I joined the group. I felt like I had nowhere to go but up. But yeah, it's been an awesome learning process. And Evan, what you just said actually speaks to a lot of going back to the beginning, why I left Wall Street. In the beginning, the environment was pretty amazing. Being on the trading floor, which pretty much doesn't exist anymore, like the old school trading floors.
Oh, it doesn't?
It's all electronic now, man. That was pretty crazy. But at the time, it was, fast paced, really competitive. Every day was new. And after you've been doing it for a while, it really just kind of became redundant. And a lot of the guys that work in that industry are total douchebags.
I love it.
And,
Thank you for fulfilling me on that.
Yeah. I think I had already gotten to the point where I decided that I had wanted to leave.
Right.
And you need a pretty thick skin to work in that industry. I mean, a lot of harsh words get thrown around. People get worked up, even though really the guys that are the most successful tend to be the guys that are the calmest, that can really keep their shit together when stuff's going bad. But there are a lot of guys that aren't like that. And yeah, there was actually a specific moment I remember. I was one of the guys I work with was out of the office. I was covering one of his clients, this guy named Dominic, who looks like a giant Uncle Fester. And Dominic came over this like direct line that we have, and the market had just made this major shift. And he asked me the price on something. It was clear he was like trying to pick me off, asking, seeing if I was kind of not paying attention to what was going on. And I came back to him and basically said, hey, let me check where this is now, because we just had this big market shift. But this is where it was like 10 minutes ago, just to kind of give you an idea in case you haven't been paying attention. And he came back to me and he said, I didn't ask you where it was 5 minutes ago. I asked you fucking where it is now. And literally at that moment, I was just like, you know what? I don't need to fucking deal with this shit anymore.
You're fucking stupid. Fuck off.
So,
wow.
But,
well, the next question, the last one that I want to ask before we go, which is, how do you find VCs? Like, how do you find a good VC? How do you find a good angel investment group? Do you just get on Google and type in like angel investors? Are there any resources that guys can lean on as far as like where to find this stuff?
Sure. So we use a website called Gust.
Okay.
And if you are looking for investors, you can enter your information in Gust and upload business plans, video
was
pitches,
just what I was thinking
that type
about.
of thing.
That was a good website, Gus.
So
Gust is pretty awesome. It
That
used to
is
be
cool.
called AngelSoft, and that's the website that we use to analyze all of our deal flow. The other thing that I think, kind of the old school way is literally just going out there and networking, right? I mean, there's so many tools you can use right now to network in person, whether it's LinkedIn or guys will just go to San Francisco or New York and just start pounding on doors. And, I don't think we see that as much as we probably used to.
Evan, you and I need to take a trip to, the three of us. We should just go to San Francisco for like 3 nights. Everybody we meet out, we just tell them we're angel investors hanging out in town to see how many tech pitches we could get.
It would be a lot.
Because San Francisco, for those who don't know, San Francisco for tech startups is like Hollywood for actors. Like you have everybody that moves to this concentrated area that's trying to do the same thing.
Well, there's also a lot of money out there too.
Yeah.
There is like right now it's kind of a wash. When I say it's a wash, like there's a ton of outside independent capital that's like freed up. That's one thing. Like honestly, I can't even tell you. I probably get 10 emails. I probably get 1 a day on like guys that are looking to invest in BlackRifle coffee, to the point where like it just have an automated copy and paste response like, no, not at this time, thank you very much for your interest. But it's like it that tells me that there's a lot of money out there.
Well, all right, guys.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot,
Great
Aaron. We definitely
episode.
appreciate
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
No, Aaron. And if you want to hear and see more about it, it's SOFLETE.com. SOFLETE.com. Thanks very much, and we will catch you next week.
Black Rifle Coffee Company, along with Arson Wave, would like to thank you for tuning in to Black-Hearted. Have a great fucking day.